Pregnant at all. Instead, the videos embolden conspiracy theorists. They're calling it Megspiracy, and the pair are being subjected to yet more merciless ridicule.
The palace has sent an official email response in regards to all the inquiries and the doubts about Harry and Meghan's children.
The royal watchers were complaining that they felt like her posts on social media where she barely shows the kids is almost taunting the king, who doesn't know.
There are some stories that refuse to disappear, no matter how many times they're denied, dismissed, or labeled conspiracy. And the strangest part? Sometimes the more silence surrounding them, the louder they become. That's exactly what's happening again around Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, and one of the most controversial royal theories the internet has obsessed over for years. But this time, the conversation took a different turn, because it wasn't a random online account pushing the theory back into headlines. It was Piers Morgan. And when Piers Morgan started connecting old royal rumors to California's legal surrogacy system, the reaction online was immediate, explosive. Suddenly, clips from past royal tours started resurfacing again. Old interviews were reanalyzed. Body language videos were turned to timelines. Questions people thought had faded quietly came roaring back into public discussion. And almost overnight, one uncomfortable question started dominating comment sections again. Why does this controversy keep returning, no matter how often it's dismissed? But before we even get into the theory itself, something important needs to be understood. This story isn't really about proof. It's about suspicion. And suspicion grows fastest in environments where people believe details don't fully add up. That's what transformed this from internet gossip into something far larger. Because over time, the speculation stopped being about isolated moments. People began building timelines, comparisons, patterns. And once that starts happening online, the story evolves into something much harder to contain. It all intensified again when discussions around California surrogacy laws entered the conversation. That's the detail that changed everything. Not because it confirmed anything, but because it made the theory feel, to some people, more structurally possible than before. And this is where things start becoming deeply complicated. Because the royal family operates under centuries of tradition, especially surrounding succession. Public presentation matters.
But before we get started, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe button, because you never know when YouTube decides to hide my videos from your homepage. And of course, leave your thoughts in the comments section. Now, let's jump into it.
Protocol matters. So when internet investigators began comparing royal customs with modern California legal systems, they believed they had found gaps worth questioning. Then came the resurfaced footage. The Australia tour clips. Videos people had already dissected endlessly years ago suddenly returned with new attention. Slow motion analysis, side-by-side comparisons, discussions about appearances, posture, movement, and whether fair or unfair, those clips became fuel for an audience already convinced something had been hidden. But here's where the story becomes difficult to untangle from emotion. Because once people emotionally commit to a theory, every detail begins reinforcing it, not disproving it. And that creates a cycle where speculation feeds itself endlessly. Still, something about this latest wave felt different. Because this time, the discussion wasn't confined to obscure forums. It was happening openly across mainstream commentary channels. And Piers Morgan's involvement amplified it dramatically. Not because he presented definitive evidence, but because he framed the entire situation around one powerful idea. If everything was completely straightforward, why do questions keep surviving? That framing changed the tone instantly. Because suddenly, the discussion wasn't just about allegations anymore. It became about silence itself. Why certain rumors are never directly addressed in detail. Why some public figures refuse engagement entirely. And whether silence calms controversy or accidentally strengthens it. But halfway through this growing storm, another layer made the situation even messier. The involvement of family voices. Comments from Samantha Markle resurfaced online. Interviews involving Thomas Markle circulated again. And once family dynamics enter a controversy, the emotional temperature changes immediately. Because now audiences aren't just analyzing timelines, they're analyzing motives, relationships, trust, and fractures inside families already heavily exposed to the public eye.
On January 13th, 2020, royal watchers were on the edge of their
Because
seats
some observers
as Harry
began
and
asking
Meghan
a very
entered what was
different question
infamously called a
altogether.
crisis meeting
Not whether
with
the
Her
theory
Majesty.
itself was true, but why the public seems so emotionally drawn to believing there must be hidden truth surrounding Meghan Markle specifically.
The
That
Queen,
question
Prince
changes
Charles, and Prince
everything.
William.
Because it
This
forces
was the
people to
deal
confront the
or no
larger
deal moment.
atmosphere surrounding
The
her
future of
public
the royal
life.
family was
An
hanging on the
atmosphere where
outcome
almost
of this
every
critical
action becomes symbolic, every appearance interpreted, every silence examined. And once someone becomes that polarizing, ordinary events
for
stop
Harry and
remaining
Meghan
ordinary.
to leave royal
Everything
duties
turns into
behind
evidence
and
for one
pursue
side
an
or the other,
independent future.
which means the conversation may no longer even be about facts alone. It becomes about perception, and perception is far more difficult to control. Then comes the second hook in this entire saga. The possibility that the theory's survival has less to do with proof and more to do with unresolved distrust between the public and institutions themselves. Because modern audiences increasingly question official narratives everywhere. Politics, media, celebrity culture, royal families. People no longer simply consume information. They investigate it, challenge it, pull it apart frame by frame. And in environments like that, uncertainty becomes oxygen. That's why controversies like this don't disappear cleanly, even without confirmation. Even without hard evidence, the lack of complete closure keeps the conversation alive indefinitely. But there's another uncomfortable layer beneath all this, one that rarely gets discussed directly: the human cost. Because regardless of where people stand on the theory, there are real children connected to the center of these discussions. Real family dynamics, real emotional consequences. And that's where online speculation collides with something much heavier than entertainment: responsibility. Still, the internet rarely slows down long enough to consider that tension, because controversy moves faster than caution, especially when royal intrigue is involved. And royal intrigue has always operated differently from normal celebrity culture. Mystery is part of its power. Silence becomes narrative. Protocol becomes symbolism. And every unanswered question creates another opening for speculation to grow. Which brings us back to why Piers Morgan's comments exploded the way they did. Not necessarily because people believed he solved anything, but because he reopened a conversation many assumed had faded away. And once reopened, the internet did what it always does. It searched for more. More clips, more contradictions, more hidden meanings, more reasons to believe there's another layer beneath the official story. But perhaps the strangest part of all this is what the controversy may reveal about the audience itself. Because sometimes public obsession says less about the people being discussed and more about the people doing the watching. Why are millions so drawn to the idea that something was hidden? Why does mystery feel more believable than clarity? And why do certain public figures become permanent magnets for suspicion, while others escape scrutiny entirely? Those questions linger.